Ericka. Hey y'all, happy Tuesday. You know what Tuesday means? It means it is Growth Groove with Dr. Ericka Day. I am so excited to be with you, and that's all I can say. I'm excited. And we're going to hope that the internets and all of the wonderful pieces of technology come together in a way that actually works for me today. Because the last time it was a little iffy, but we are making it happen. So welcome. I'm your host, Dr. Ericka, and you might be wondering, what are we talking about tonight? So tonight we're talking about reclaiming joy using forgiveness to improve your mental wellness. You might be like, why, Dr. Ericka? Well, Dr. Ericka, number one, knows, and she has one curl that is 100% doing its own thing. And I am thoroughly excited to be with you today to have this discussion. And as you come in, do me a favor. On the first thing is, if you like what you heard or you think someone that needs to hear this message, can you do me a favor and tag them? The next thing, if you know someone that needs this, share. Sharing is caring. I'm just here for it. So the next thing is we talked about tagging, we talked about sharing, and if you're watching it later, put hashtag replay in the comments. Let me know. So might wonder, why are we talking about this? Well, it's the beginning of the year, and one of the things I've talked about is I typically will have some thoughts about what is the theme for the year, or words that are going to really signify what I am working on for the year. And for this year, I have two. One is intentionality and the other one is forgiveness. So that inspired me to go ahead and talk to you some about forgiveness. And I want to make sure that this is something that is useful for you. So it's going to be more than forgiveness is good. Because I'm a psychiatrist and I sit and talk to people, and I literally was talking to a kid today, and the kid was like, I'm like, well, sometimes you don't finish your work at home. You have to do your homework. Well, that's my time. I'm like, well, your job is to do work. It's not always fun. And, I remember one of the things I told him was, through life, there are times we have to do things we don't want to do. There are times we do things because it's the right thing to do. And there are times where what we need to do isn't fun. It isn't convenient. And it may take work. And that's one of the things about forgiveness is it's not always fun. It's not always the first thing we want to do. It's not convenient, and it takes work. But the great thing, and one of the things I hope you've seen in your life, and I have seen it over and over again in mine and the lives of the people I work with through speaking and through being a psychiatrist, is that a lot of times the things that are going to get you better mental health and that are going to make you feel better, help your emotions be more regulated, take work. It just does. I wish there was a way to snap your fingers and it all be done. It's part of the reason why in therapy you have homework, and why therapy isn't just one session, or we don't snap our fingers and everything is better. So a lot of times the things that are going to give you the big payoffs are inconvenient, a little uncomfortable, and they take work. But a lot of times when things are that combination, you're going to get a really, really good payoff. So if you don't know me, I'm your host, Dr. Ericka, Harvard-trained, double board certified psychiatrist and host of the hit podcast, Better with Dr. Ericka. I help busy people who are stuck, because I am rationally passionate about helping you be better, do better, and live better. I do that through my adult telepsychiatry practice, my books, including Fix Your Fairy Tale, The Woman's Guide to a Great Life, Love, and Legacy, my podcast, which we talked about, Better with Dr. Ericka, and my speaking. I do all of this to help busy people like you that show up for work, you show up for your friends, you show up for your family, you show up for your community. You're so busy showing up for everyone, you don't show up for yourself. So I do this to help put you back in your life. So as I talked about earlier, we were talking about reclaiming joy using forgiveness to improve mental wellness. What are some of the reasons why forgiveness matters? Number one, I think I've mentioned this before. I was at an American Psychiatric Association meeting. Bishop Desmond Tutu was talking, and he said, forgiveness isn't for wussies. But one of the biggest things about it is forgiveness is like one of those gifts that keeps giving. Let me tell you why. The first thing is, and I think a lot of you, have you ever been just frustrated or angry with someone? And one of the things you notice is they've gone on and lived their life. And what are you doing? Stewing on everything that went wrong, sometimes feeling sad, hurt, betrayed, upset, anxious. And your life is totally interrupted and theirs is not because they are living their best life. The other thing is sometimes when life is not perfect, we do not make all of the best decisions all the time. It's part of what life is. And the other thing is it's not even always about making the best decision. Sometimes we talk a lot about, especially in the world of success in business, that they talk a lot about the most successful people have failed multiple times. And one of the things is failure's not fun. And it can be a part of the process. It can even be something that turns out to be positive, but it's not fun. And one of the reasons forgiveness is so powerful and so important is it releases all of this pent up emotional energy. Because a lot of times when we're holding on to hurt, regret, shame, those can all come from times where we haven't forgiven ourselves. Because when you are upset with yourself, frustrated with yourself, mad at yourself, a lot of times people can feel sad, they can feel anxious, they can feel shame and regret, and even betrayal about themselves. And then when we take this to other people, well, that just puts so much difficult emotional energy because sometimes people are sad or dysphoric, anxious, irritable, angry because of all these things that they're holding on. The other way this impacts you beyond just the sheer emotion is the quality and ability to have healthy relationships. That a lot of times when we're holding on to a lot of these emotions, it may be harder to connect with others in a healthy way and to form and continue to pour into healthy relationships. That includes your relationship with yourself. So it can be something that it can be very freeing and releasing. Now, you might be like, why does it matter if I'm mad? Why does it matter if I'm sad? Why does it matter if I'm upset or I'm pissed off? Why does it matter? It matters because there's this magic word called neuroplasticity. Say it with me. Neuroplasticity. The simple way to look at neuroplasticity is it's the ability that the brain continues to find and form new connections so that it's changing as things go. So it's not like um, your brain is one way and it's going to stay the same way your whole life. It changes, the connections change, they grow. The expression of different neurotransmitters may change depending on what's going on in the synaptic neuronal connections. And one of the things about it is to remember is you have neuroplasticity. Your brain and its changes in neurotransmitters change. The good thing about that, it means, is we can change them for the better. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about forgiveness, for us to kind of also think of it on a biochemical level of some of what it's going on. So it's something me saying better than you're just going to feel better. Because I'm all about the be better, do better, and live better. But I want to give you information more than it's just going to make you feel better. Now, we talked about the fact that there can be a lot of emotions tied up in whatever you're holding on to that you may need to forgive, or regarding the person you need to forgive, be it yourself or someone else. And that a lot of times there's just emotion held with it. It's very rare I talk to someone that feels like they need to forgive something or feels like there's something to be forgiven and there's no emotion tied to it anymore. Because usually it doesn't take a lot of effort to forgive something you don't care about. So going back to what we were talking about, we're going to loop this. This is all going to come full circle. So hang in there. We're going to bring it together. So there are a couple of parts of the brain I want you to think about. On the basic level, we're talking about the fact that how your neurotransmitters are regulated, which can have to do with emotional regulation and how you subjectively feel, and how they are triggered. We talked about how that can change. Now, there's a part of the brain which, ironically, there's a BTS member named Sugar, or Auguste or Sugar. I said Sugar. Ugh, I mean Sugar. That has a whole song called My Amygdala. So the amygdala is a part of the brain that deals with memory, decision making, and emotional responses. And people talk about it a lot of times in the context of emotional responses, including fear, anxiety, or aggression. But just think of it kind of it's the center of kind of memory and holds emotions. And what we're looking at, and part of the conversation we're having, is the amygdala can then have impacts on how neurotransmitters are modulated. And why does this matter? This matters because when we're caught in these emotionally charged um, situations or environments, it can then be encoded in a memory, and memories that are tied to emotions tend to get tied a little bit quicker or imprint faster, be they positive or negative. And if it's something that has a lot of hurt or other negative emotions tied to it, then not only will it imprint and you'll have these memories, but you can have those emotional responses. And we have a lot of talk about triggers. And what ends up happening is it ends up modulating so that the responses in your nervous system are going to then get into what's going to feel like negative patterns of thinking or neurotransmitters that are going to modulate more negative emotions. And just like anything, the more you kind of sit with it, the more just like any skill, the more you practice it, the more it happens. So the more you're stuck in these negative emotions, negative feedback, the more your brain's going to give it to you because those pathways are going to be modulated up. Well, then the pathways that are going to modulate pleasure and feel good feelings are going to get modulated down. So the reason forgiveness is so important is we're looking at ways to redistribute how all of these systems are working so that then we can switch, number one, give you more emotional regulation. So a lot of times with forgiveness, then those triggers for those negative emotions that were tied to whatever you feel like you need to forgive is, then that goes away. And those aren't triggers for you anymore. But the other is that it will make way for you to be able to be stimulated more for positive emotions. So that's part of the reason forgiveness is a gift to yourself, regard, even if it's forgiving yourself, but also forgiving other people, is that you're looking at really it breaks down to the neurobiology of letting go. So rewiring your brain to have more positive responses after you're not holding on to negative emotions, which are going to modulate neurotransmitters that are going to give you more of those negative emotions. So why does forgiveness matter? Because you don't deserve to hold on to all this emotional baggage. Forgiveness is one of the fastest ways to let go of that emotional baggage. And that's one of the reasons I think it's important to talk about. It's important to talk about forgiving yourself, but also forgiving other people. But it's that letting go, because once you have forgiven, and I didn't say forget, once you have forgiven or exercise forgiveness, then you're not holding on all to that emotional energy. And it's not going to sit there to be able to trigger you and sit with you and just make you feel bad. And then a lot of times, if it's things that we need to forgive ourselves with, a lot of times those emotions that you're forgiving are going to release shame and guilt and doubt and just frustration with yourself. So forgiveness is a gift of releasing. Now you might be like, well, Dr. Erica, I'm pissed off or I'm disgusted. How do I forgive? I'm going to give you a couple of tips. The first tip is to remember forgiveness is a gift to yourself. I feel like it's easier to access forgiveness if you're not thinking of it as something you're doing for someone else. Because then it doesn't matter if they deserve it or not. You don't have to sit and go through all of the mental gymnastics of deciding if the person you forgive deserves forgiveness. You don't, because the forgiveness is for you. So the first is remembering that forgiveness is a gift for you. Doesn't matter what they deserve. It's for you, and you deserve to not have that emotional baggage. The second is to potentially get clarity on what you're forgiving someone for. The next is looking at any lessons that were learned from whatever act you're forgiving. And this could be a wide variety of things. If you're upset with paying your taxes late, the lesson you learned is what systems need to be in place to get your finances in order. If you're upset and you feel like you need to forgive a friend that betrayed you, you can think of, well, what are some things I could do differently? Or what are some things to look for that I've learned to look for in friendships that are going to be healthy? Or what do I need to get from a friend? Or what are ways I can be the kind of friend that I want? But it's basically just looking and figuring out what the lessons are. So the three tips are: number one, remember forgiveness is for you. Number two, get clarity on what you're actually forgiving. Number three is to think about what are the lessons you've learned in the future. And this has nothing to do with whose fault it is, but just what are the lessons so that you're going to get something out of the experience. Because one of the things that then makes forgiveness feel like it's not a loss because, you forgave someone, but they did something, is that you're still going to get a lesson out of it. You're going to learn something that's going to make your life better. Sound like a plan? You ready? Ready to get on this forgiveness train? But I want to encourage you to really be mindful and intentional about forgiveness because it's something that can really lighten your emotional load. And the other thing is not only lighten the emotional load you are actually carrying, but also give you the emotional capacity to be able to have healthy relationships with others and yourself. Deal? Sound good? And part of the reason we want to do that is it's going to change kind of that equation of negative to positive emotions. So once you are able to activate forgiveness, you release some of the negative emotions, which gives you emotional energy to use otherwise. And that's also free to be able to experience more positive emotions. So in the end of the day, I want you to be able to have that emotional space. But the other thing is by activating forgiveness, it can decrease triggers, which can also help you with emotional regulation, which is also lovely. Nobody wants to feel emotionally dysregulated. Plus, when you're in these spaces and you activate forgiveness, it helps start shifting something we call negative cognitive distortions, which is kind of how you look at the world and how you experience things, so that you don't necessarily experience the worst of any scenario. So that's what I got for you today. Thank you for tuning in. Again, if you know someone that needs this, please tag them. If you know someone that needs this, please share. And the last thing is if you are watching later, don't worry about it. Just put a hashtag replay in the comments. Thanks so much for tuning in. I feel all of the love. I'm not being your doctor right now. Here for educational purposes only. But if you actually, I'm all over the place. If you want me to be your doctor and you're interested in talking to me one-on-one as your psychiatrist, visit goodwinmed.com, goodwinmed.com, and you can get more information on my private practice. Now, something I'm super excited about is, guess what? We talked about it. Season 5 of the podcast is here. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Let's see if I can make all these things work because I told you, me and the internets and all this stuff have not always been friends, especially today. There we go. So season 5 has started. I'm super excited. So I want to update you on some episodes. So the episode that is going to come out tomorrow features Dr. Carol Penn, who is someone that is one of my super friends. And we're talking about mindset and changing the face of medicine. You're not going to want to miss that. And the one before it, you are going to love. Also featured Hallie Brooke talking about health coaching and living nourished. And we really dig in to talking about what are some ways that the face of healthcare is changing. What are ways we can empower people to have better health, and what are also the roles of health coaching and how to continue to pour into yourself so that your emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical wellness improves. And then next week, you're going to want to check out Dr. Netta Hovezi. We're talking about achievement, aesthetics, and the soul. You're going to want to check that out too. So I'm so excited. Season 5 is here. I encourage you can go as below to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, or to betterthepodcast.com and get more information about the podcast and listen to some episodes. And I would love if you were follow or subscribe. So thanks again for coming. I'm your host, Dr. Ericka, Harvard-trained, double board certified psychiatrist. I'm extremely passionate about helping people be better, do better, and live better. I do that through my adult telepsychiatry, my books, my speaking and my hit podcast, Better with Dr. Erica. I do all of that to help busy people like you that show up for work, you show up for your friends, you show up for your family, you show up for your community, you show up for everybody, but you don't show up for yourself. I do this to put you back in your life. Growth Group with Dr. Erica shows up on Tuesday nights. So excited to be here and do quality time with you. I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. You start missing me, you can always watch some other videos, and you can always go back and binge listen to the podcast. Until next time, take your left hand, put it on your right arm, right hand, left arm. Give yourself a squeeze because you deserve it, and have a great night. I'm trying. Bye.